We only have 5 more minutes now, so I'm going to go to the edge of the panel and ask Bob on the end there to sum up. I'm going to hang around for a while. I suspect most of the panelists will. There are people at least as interesting in the panel and the audience. I don't know if you guys know just how good Henning is or what Mike has done if they're in the audience. Bob, sum up.
Well, my quick sum up is that things aren't that bad generally, but there are pockets of bad that that should be fixed, or at least deserve some attention from, let's call it government in some fashion. But that overall things are pretty good, and therefore we shouldn't impose regulation across the 95% just necessarily to solve the 5% problem. But if we think a little more locally, think a little more specifically, and try to solve each problem as it appears, a different solution for different problems rather than one solution trying to fit all, we might end up with an optimal broadband network now and in the future, so that in some cases there will be government involvement and government regulation and other things like that, and in other markets, hey, things are actually doing pretty well. And I'm actually pretty optimistic that through a muddling through process, rather than a one grand strategy, I think we'll do better muddling through than trying to foretell the future, because the one thing we do know about the internet, about telecommunications, it's very difficult to predict the next big thing. So just muddle through, and I think we'll get there.
Most of it right in 2009, and it's now 2013, and you're right on target. You predicted pretty well.
No, we weren't predicting. We were just collecting and reporting, but things are pretty good. We are on track. There are problems that need to be solved. Let's focus just on the problems and muddle through. That's mine.
Well, I think one kind of underlying theme that I've noticed throughout this whole debate is that, we kind of have a baseline discussion going on underneath all of our comments, which is the values, and I know that I keep going back to, naming these anecdotal uses and things like that, but part of that is to show that this debate at its heart is really about our social values, the principles that we want to see in the network, and how we want the community to be served. The numbers they all have to serve those values at the end of the day. And for us, if the network isn't giving us enough to serve those values, things like access, affordability, ubiquity, then it's not good enough, and we need to try again. So that, for me, I think we have to go back and think about what are the principles that we're trying to serve. Are they being served? If not, then we need to try harder.
Jeff?
Well, I started out saying the choices between a government-centric vision and an entrepreneurial private sector dynamic vision, and I think that's what it comes down to. Whose values are being served? The values of the American people as individuals, or the values of people sitting here in Washington who want to impose a gigabit on this, or some other kind of value on that. And I think at the end of the day, centralizing control over something as important as the internet is a little bit of a scary thing to do. It's also just empirically not been an effective thing to do. So if you I know Dave is back from Australia. The National Broadband Project in Australia was launched 4 or 5 years ago, I think 5 years ago. They're now promising to get to complete the project by 2021. Broadband speeds in Australia declined precipitously, fell sharply in Australia during 2012, according to the latest Akamai report. So when you turn it over to government, you don't get the results you dreamed about or you wanted, or in pursuit of your values. What you get is the opposite of that. You get Tesla, Solyndra, and Fisker, and we can't afford to do that to our internet.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here today. I just would associate myself with Robert C. remarks. I think sort of Lindblomian incrementalism is a very good way to go when you're dealing with an industry and a technology that's fundamentally dynamic. We don't know what's going to happen, so we can't get too far ahead of ourselves. We just got to keep pivoting and moving. Having said that, I think the three biggest challenges we have is, one is spectrum. We've got to get more spectrum, particularly all you DoD people, close your ears.
Give it up.
Give it up.
We don't have to give it up. We have the technical means
You're
to
the problem.
share it.
Actually, we don't. The sharing is we issued a thing on sharing. Sharing is useful, but it's not enough. And the problem with sharing is it lets you off the hook, and you're wasting certain spectrum. And sharing can be part of it, but you got to do that. The second thing is, and broadcaster spectrum. The second thing is we need to get the IP transition right. And in a panel we did yesterday, Blair Levin, I think, had the absolutely right point. Just as we had a DTV transition, we needed a copper certain date transition where you just can stop and cut them. And then the last point, and to me the most important one, is we have to be better and smarter about adoption and digital literacy. We've got to think through that and figure out how to we need to get from 60 to, or excuse me, we need to get from 70 to 80 in the next 5 years, and then even higher.
Yeah, unfortunately, every program we watched and funded through NTIA to try to improve adoption was a miserable failure, and anything that's been looked at conscientiously in that set really did very, very badly. We have not found a way to make that work, no matter how much we think it would be great to do that. I am going to wrap up by saying, okay, we had an ideological debate here. Some of us, obviously the U.S. is just as good as many, better in some ways, and not as good as the best in many other ways. Nellie Cruz, he was quoting there in December, was telling me that the U.S. prices are twice as high as European. She's exaggerating, but by and large there's a gap, and we really are higher, and I know the original data. There's lots of ways we can be better. Some of us think that government should jump in and do something about it. That's me, that's Jody. Some of us think that if government jumps in, it's going to get muddled. The Australian example to date is they're doing a god-awful job. They're already desperately behind schedule and twice over budget. And if that's the way government is always going to be, it's right to keep government out of things. But I'm also looking at some folks here in the US military who I think will tell me that while snafu is a military word that I can't repeat what it actually means in polite company, government sometimes can do a bloody good job of taking care of things. And some of us think that a better broadband is worth pulling government in. And let's disagree on the philosophy and try to keep our facts straight meanwhile. Thank you all for coming, and I'm glad we didn't lose too many people along the way.